welcome to your reading. This is going to be your geoscope for the upcoming new moon in Cancer, which happens on the 20th of July 2020. So this is going to be the second new moon that we've had in Cancer in a couple of months. The first one was the solstice solar eclipse that we had on the 21st of June. So in many ways, this is likely to be a follow-up. This is going to sort of take us out of that lunar eclipse energy, which was about kind of releasing patterns and situations and karmic lessons from the last 18 months to 2.5 years. And it's going to move us back into that solar eclipse energy, which started a new 6-month cycle that will take us through to December. I guess the main difference between that eclipse and this one, I mean, that new moon would, solar eclipse happens at new moon, and this one is that the solar eclipse happened in the beginning degrees of Cancer, and this one happens towards the end of Cancer. So it's a kind of a book ending, and I think that duality and mirroring are going to be a big theme again during this particular lunar phase. The Sabian symbol for this particular degree is a Greek muse weighs newly born twins on golden scale. So already we've got this idea of polarity in the scales, this kind of needing to balance two opposites. And then we also have the idea of twinning, which was big and has been big since Venus ingressed into Gemini. So those are sort of a few things to bear in mind, because of course Gemini is for you your kind of counterpart sign. It's the house of relationship, and that will get activated by this lunar phase because of Venus's aspects to Neptune. But we'll get into that a little bit further on in the reading. So let's just start by shuffling the cards and seeing what wants to come through in terms of messages for this particular this upcoming lunar phase. The other thing I should mention is that I have actually just finished producing an ebook on geomancy. So if you've enjoyed these readings and you're a little bit intrigued about geomancy and you fancy perhaps trying it for yourself, then there is a link in the description box, if you're interested in finding out more. Okay, let's cut the cards. Interesting. Okay. Oh, right. So your first card out is Fortuna Major, which is probably one of the most auspicious figures in the deck. So this is the Sun in Leo, and it may be pertinent that, of course, the Sun will ingress into Leo a couple of days after this particular new moon. So Leo season may well be important for you. It is another fire sign, a fellow fire sign. So it may be that you kind of feel that your Sun works better, in this energy. I also think that Aries may have got this figure in this particular place. So if you've got Aries placements, you might want to just go and watch the geoscope for that too, because it might be relevant. So anyway, this is really about you coming into this particular lunar cycle very focused on your success, on abundance, on striding forward, making headway, making progress, and just feeling like things are on the up, that kind of winner energy. Okay, but so interesting. So swings and roundabouts. So here we have the 4th house, which is the house of roots and ancestry, as well as family and home. And here we've got Amicia, which is Venus in Taurus. Now, in the geomantic figures, this is associated with loss, or with a sense of things changing. It's reminding us of, it's an earth geomantic figure. So this is kind of reminding us that anything earthly that is in the physical or the 3D, what doesn't last, there's a kind of a natural aging process built into whatever happens in the 3D. And so there's this element of transience. Everything that is material kind of is born and then will ultimately die, and the 4 elements themselves constantly change from one form into another. That's just sort of the way it is. The only constant is change, and I think that is going to be a theme for you when it comes to home and family. It seems as though potentially you're letting go of something, or perhaps you've got your eye on a property that you're keen to either buy or rent, and it's sort of just unattainable. It's always kind of out of reach. Maybe somebody else makes a better offer, or for whatever reason the sale falls through. It could be that kind of energy, but there's definitely a sense here of feeling that something is unattainable, or just out of reach, or the things haven't quite worked out the way that you would like. Now, of course, it could also relate to family dynamics. It could be that you feel that somebody's let you down, or you're feeling a little bit disappointed in a family member. That's also, I suppose the way it is when it comes to family dynamics. They always, I think, of any particular group of people trigger us the most. So, it does seem as though there is some energy here that you're working with in terms of loss or disappointment with regards to family. Okay, so so relationships, I think, are going to be a bit of a sort of a flashpoint for you during this particular lunar phase. And do bear in mind that this lunar phase only lasts for 1 lunar month, so 4 weeks at most, as opposed to the solar eclipse energy, which lasts for 6 months. So when it comes to one-to-one relationships, it does seem as though passion is a key theme for you during this kind of upcoming lunar phase. So passion can be expressed in one of two ways. This is Mars in Scorpio energy, and that can either work in terms of igniting our passion in terms of a physical attractiveness, or kind of being very drawn to somebody, kind of magnetically almost, because Scorpio is very associated with that kind of mesmeric energy. But on the other hand, it can also indicate manipulation, or possible kind of behind the scenes maneuvering or manipulation, or sometimes obsession when it comes to one-to-one partnerships. So I think there's undercurrents. That's possibly a good way to put this. So it's either kind of physical attractiveness and a kind of magnetic pull towards somebody, or it's about looking at what's going on below the surface, because there may be some undercurrents that need to be dealt with. And this may, of course, link to whatever's going on with family dynamics. So yes, just something to be aware of. But obviously we'll get more information once we've done all the conversions. Okay, interesting. So this axis for you, I think there's going to be a lot of shifting and changing over the course of the next lunar month. I feel as though your goals and perhaps where you live are shifting, and that's why we've got a Missio here twice across this axis. So this is the kind of the trunk of the tree. This is career and your kind of public image, and then below we've got the roots of the tree. This is what anchors us and allows us to kind of grow upwards and to sort of spread into the light. And I feel as though this whole axis is kind of shifting for you. So perhaps your priorities are changing. Maybe you're thinking about relocating, moving. Maybe you are thinking that a direction that you've been pursuing in terms of career is not really resonating with you anymore, and it's time to kind of shift. So just something to bear in mind over the next lunar month. But as I say, let's see what comes out with the conversions before we make any further judgments. So I'm just going to pause the video while I do those quickly. Hi Sag, welcome back. So I've done all the conversions, and let's get into your reading a little bit more. So let's start with the new moon itself. Now this happens in the sign of Cancer, as I said, and for you this falls in your 8th house, which is shared resources, or kind of joint ventures. So it's very often where we share physical or emotional possessions or resources with others, and it's usually one other person. So there may be a link to the 7th house here. Very often the 8th house is considered to be to the 7th what the 2nd house is to the 1st. So it's the 2nd house is kind of an extension of us, and then the 8th house is an extension of where we join with others, either in work or love. So when it comes to the 8th house, as I said, the sun and the moon will be in Cancer, and this usually represents the start of a new cycle. And the geomantic figure that we've got here, Puer, is Mars in Aries. So this is the first sign of the zodiac. And it's possible that you're feeling that you're kind of rearing to go when it comes to, wanting to start a new cycle when it comes to joint resources and that kind of thing. Now, the other thing to say is that sometimes Mars in Aries can also be conflict, because Mars is the god of war, and Aries does tend to sort of, like as the ram, butt heads with people. So it's possible that there is some kind of contest or conflict over shared resources, such as, for example, a legacy in a will. It could also have something to do with divorce proceedings, where you are kind of having to divide up assets, and that's not always a very easy process. Smooth. It could have to do with bank loans. It could also have to do with interactions with the tax authority, for example. But in general, this is kind of new energy starting, so it's entirely possible that you've decided you want to sort of team up with one other person, or you've recently taken a relationship to a new level of commitment, and now you're trying to work out how to sort of take things forward. Perhaps there's a kind of a moving in together happening, and this may be why we have this sense of transience happening here in the 4th house. But yes, it's one of those that, similar to Rubeus, that you could read either way, because Mars is considered to be the lesser malefic, so it's often to do with difficulties or strife or kind of problems, but it can sometimes be that motivational energy that we need, that kind of focus and drive that we need when we're starting something new. Now, if we look across from the 8th to the 2nd house, here we're going to have Saturn in Capricorn making an almost direct opposition to the Sun and the Moon at the full moon, at the new moon. So this can often mean the need for kind of balancing, or it can be some kind of obstacle or block that sort of comes up, and that is calling for us to sort of look at something in more detail. Perhaps a fortunate delay. That's one way that we could interpret this. Now, Saturn did regress back into Capricorn just before the last lunar eclipse, so the last full moon, and there may be a tie to whatever started to kind of happen at that lunar eclipse. So just bear that in mind, with what kind of unfolds. But we do have here Quisitia, which is Jupiter in Sagittarius, so your sign, and this is generally to do with gain, and it's usually gained through earned income. Now, I should point out here that not only Saturn but also Jupiter is in Capricorn currently, so we'll be in this particular part of your chart. And Jupiter is about expansion, whereas Saturn is about contraction and sort of reduction, having to sort of like tighten our belt, to sort of cut back, etc. And so what I'm feeling is that there's this kind of not push-pull energy, but a kind of like a pinching in one area in order to maximize in another. So there's this kind of compensating energy. So where you might lose here in terms of swings, in terms of then with roundabouts, you're going to sort of gain. So my feeling is just sort of intuitively from looking at the 4th and the 7th and the 10th house, that possibly what's happening here is that you are moving out of the energy of some kind of joint agreement or arrangement, a financial arrangement that you've had with one other person, and you're moving more into a kind of an independent energy, where you are wanting to sort of be a little bit more financially independent of this person, possibly a family member or a partner, so that you don't have to kind of get into the sort of the politics or the kind of the strings that are attached, when it comes to this particular relationship, because we do have this sort of difficulty here, this sort of sense of loss. We've got the sense of possible manipulation going on here, and sometimes this can result in a power struggle of some kind. So I kind of feel like you're moving away from that energy. And interesting that you've got Fortuna Major as you come into this particular lunar phase. So I kind of feel as though you want to generate your own income, so that you're not kind of subject to the whims or the conditions that come with a kind of a joint agreement. So it's interesting that we've got Jupiter here. Now, about a week after this, this lunar phase gets underway, we've got a really nice sextile between Jupiter and Neptune happening. Now, Neptune happens to be in your 4th house, so this is Pisces for you, and this is Capricorn energy. So this energy, I think, is going to kickstart some positivity for you and opening up a kind of an expansion, and I think that this is going to be beneficial. So I think what's going to happen is that there's kind of like Neptune tends to kind of dissolve boundaries but also obstacles. So I kind of feel as though Neptune here may dissolve agreements or arrangements, or situations that aren't necessarily to your benefit in order that you can kind of expand here in your second house. Now this can also relate to self-worth and value, which of course ties into the seventh house. So if you are feeling that somebody is trying to be a little bit too controlling when it comes to either a business arrangement or a one-to-one relationship, then I do feel as though this energy will help you to sort of to move out of that energy and into something that feels a little bit freer, because of course Jupiter loves freedom, particularly in the sign of Sagittarius, and just allow you to kind of be the master of your own fate, the captain of your own ship. It's interesting that we've got Acquisitio reflected also in your 12th house, which is the house of your psyche. So I do feel as though there is this internal motivation to kind of break free from any sort of control or manipulation kind of energy, particularly if that involves money, and move to kind of a more kind of free and open situation. So as I say, this could well be about a divorce or some kind of family arrangement where there's sort of joint finances involved. There could be a moving out of the family home, for example, and so there is this sense of kind of loss or nostalgia. But what I am feeling though is that there is a need to put in boundaries, because we do have Corsair here, which is Saturn in Capricorn in the third house. So this is communication with others. Very often it's also to do with immediate family, so it can be siblings or cousins, for example, as well as neighbors and those that we encounter in our immediate environment, on a kind of day-to-day basis. So Saturn here is really asking you to put in limitations. So perhaps being guarded about what you say, being careful about what you say, in case it's kind of used against you. There may be a bit of gossip going on here. But also, if you are in the middle of legal proceedings, then, perhaps it's also a good idea just to sort of be very clear about your boundaries. Or just if you feel that somebody is not really respecting your boundaries and being a little bit too controlling, just sort of drawing the line a little bit. But on the positive, we do have a new cycle starting for you here in the 9th house. This is Caput Draconis, which is the north node of the moon, and I do associate this particularly with solar eclipses and with new moons. So this is the start of a new karmic contract, kind of new energy coming in, and the 9th house is the house of relatives that live at a distance, so overseas. It's also to do with foreign cultures or countries, so people that you kind of meet that are not from the same background as you or the same religion. It's also about spirituality, about higher education, as well as things like publishing. So there may be a link here between 3rd and 9th house when it comes to that, but definitely a new phase starting with you. So maybe if people come into your reality that are of a different nationality to you, a different religion, pay attention, because they may have important spiritual life lessons to teach you. This is very often new soul contracts kind of coming in. But going back to the astrology, as I was saying, we've got this wonderful sextile happening between Jupiter in Capricorn and Pisces, and Neptune in Pisces. And then we also on the same day have a square between Neptune and Venus. Now Venus will be in your 7th house of significant others. And this is the last of 3 squares that we've had this year in between Venus and Neptune. So the first happened in May, the second happened in June, and this is the final one. So this is really closing out a cycle that has to do with kind of loss, deception, sometimes where we deceive ourselves, where we may be in denial, or where others may be in denial, where we have perhaps worn rose-tinted glasses in the past, or where we've sold ourselves short. So but you'll kind of know what this is. As I say, it has been active since May, and this is just the closing out of that cycle. So I think the key thing to remember here is that we've got this two-way energy. So as one door closes, another one is opening. So there's this wonderful, as I say, this theme of the scales and the twins sort of happening. So when we look at your final outcome, it looks really positive. We definitely are starting a new cycle, so it's reiterating this 9th house energy as well as the 8th house energy. But we, there's also kind of a need for detachment, a blank slate, And it's interesting that we've got Rubeus in your 7th house, because these are almost the sort of mirror opposites, or kind of counterpart energies to each other. Albus is white and Rubeus is red. This is Mercury in Gemini, which is an air sign. It's quite cerebral and logical, and this is Mars in Scorpio, which is quite hot-headed and, you know, emotional. So I think it's calling for a need for detachment, particularly, you know, when it comes to relationships, if things have been a little bit kind of heated. It's saying take a detached approach and see things from a kind of logical perspective. Use your head to sort of sort things out and not get snared up in, you know, ongoing conflicts, drama, and you know, kind of emotional manipulation. The other thing it could be pointing to is contracts of some kind, because we are talking about Mercury. And it's interesting that, you know, Albus is often associated with a blank sheet of paper. So it could be, you know, contract negotiations that we're talking about here, which is why we've got 8th house. This could very well be heated, you know, contract negotiations, possibly with lawyers involved. So I think it's pointing to this, but this is also about a fresh start. So kind of detaching, deciding, you know, you want things to go in a different way, which is why we've got this new karmic cycle starting. And then your outcome is acquisitio, so really reinforcing this 12th and 2nd house energy, which is about expansion, it's about success, it's about gain. So it's almost a kind of karmic reward, or sort of blessings from the universe after either a period of suffering or perhaps a period of prolonged hard work or sacrifice. And here, you know, a mystio can sometimes be about sacrifice, particularly when we've got Neptune, you know, and Pisces energy in the mix. So I think, you know, if you have kind of been through a difficult period recently, particularly during the last lunar cycle that we had, that lunar eclipse in Capricorn was quite difficult energy, then just know that this phase marks a transition point between sort of leaving behind that old energy and coming into new, much more positive energy going forward. So this is what I've seen throughout the readings, actually, is that this lunar phase is going to be a tale of 2 chapters almost. There's this closing out of old energy, possibly a residue of that lunar eclipse energy, which is closing out either a 6-month cycle or a sort of one and a half, like an 18-month to 2-year cycle. So, you know, there are endings happening and there are new beginnings happening, and I think that where you start this particular lunar phase is not necessarily where you will end up. Let me put it that way. But yes, so again, you know, you've got this really positive outcome, Sagittarius, which has been a theme over quite a few of your geoscopes. I have a feeling that the solar eclipse geoscope was also very, very positive. So as I say, I do think that this particular, you know, being in the same sign, that this new moon is picking up on that energy and asking you to resume to kind of with forward motion, particularly now that Mercury is now direct, and we're past that lunar eclipse energy, which was about releasing what no longer serves us, releasing old karmic contracts. And, you know, here we've got Cauda Draconis, which is about release in your 6th house. So I feel as though life for you is about to change, you know, either in terms of work or in terms of everyday routine. So again, this could be indicating some kind of house move or relocation, possibly a new job, which is why we've got increase in earnings here. And, you know, maybe you've got a controlling boss or a business partner that you kind of are leaving behind. And that's why there's this shift in terms of your career, your trajectory, really. But overall, as I say, positive new starts happening, blank sheets of paper, taking a detached perspective in order to sort of move past any potential issues and problems, and keeping your eye on the prize, because there's definitely gain coming your way. So I hope that's been helpful, Sagittarius. Do hit the like button if you've enjoyed this reading. If it's resonated, do let me know in the comments. And yes, I look forward to catching you again in a couple of weeks with my next forecast.